What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with a Dynasty Superflex startup mock draft. We haven't done one of these in I don't know, 3 months before. We haven't done a mock draft in a while. The point is, a lot has changed. We want to see how players' values are shaking out. Of course, the first round 3 months ago probably looks a lot different than the first round now, and so on and so forth. I'm sure a lot of these rookies have risen. The Superflex landscape definitely changed quite a bit with some of the rookie quarterbacks. They were going at a high price before. Maybe they've taken a bit of a dip. So all that we're going to kind of go through in this video today. If you guys want a chance to be part of this, because we are doing this with our Discord members, you can sign up on patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange to get into our Discord. Almost 400 members in there strong right now to help give you some advice. And if you guys want to support us on YouTube, you can become a member by going to our YouTube page and hitting that join button. And if you guys enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe. But Danny, how you doing?
Doing well. And yeah, I kind of smudged the intro a couple times before I let Corey take the reins there, but I'm doing well. I'm actually really excited to get through a Dynasty mock draft because, again, this has been something that we haven't really done all season. We've been talking about our rankings. We've been playing DFS. We've been worrying about our own matchups. We haven't really looked forward to what the Dynasty landscape could potentially look at going into the offseason this season, because let's be honest here, we're in already a few Dynasty leagues, but you best believe we're going to be doing a couple startups this offseason. So I'm ready to roll. I'm hyped up. I'm going to hit this randomize, and then we're going to be seeing exactly what the order is and what the picks are after the intro. All right, so as you guys can see on the screen, we're about to start this draft. We got a full 12-man lobby here. Going to hit that randomize button, and then we're going to get going. So let me just go to draft settings, draft order, hit that randomize, and boom, we are ready to roll. I am actually rocking from the 110. You're rocking from the 105. So we'll see how this can get going.
So again, this is for those of you guys that didn't hear the rules at the beginning, this is a Superflex mock draft. Yeah, so if you guys didn't hear at the beginning of the video, we talked about what the scoring format is. This is a Dynasty Superflex PPR league. There's no tight end premium in this mock draft. We're basically, again, we're just seeing where these guys go. And that obviously is the biggest change and the first change so far. Consistently throughout the offseason all year, we had seen Justin Herbert go as like the 4th, 5th, 6th quarterback off the board, with Josh Allen consistently going as the 2nd quarterback off the board. The fact that he, cements himself here as the 102. Now, I think it is pretty fluid at the top between him, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, whatever guy you kind of prefer. But the fact that Herbert has kind of entered that tier into that top 3 overall pick status, I definitely think that's valid. And also Jonathan Taylor kind of solidifying himself as a top 5 guy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're looking at Jonathan Taylor, obviously the RB1 this year, still only 22 years old. So it makes sense to have him as the first running back off the board. In terms of Justin Herbert, I mean, it's basically the same. He's already a top 10 at minimum talent quarterback in the league. And you're also getting him at 22 years old with obviously the massive arm talent and the mobility. So as we've kind of noticed in these past couple years in Dynasty, obviously, is that quarterbacks are going to be flying off the board. You guys can see there, 5 of the first 6 picks are quarterbacks. And I think that's validly so, because at the end of the day here, if you're talking about a firm value accumulation standpoint, all those quarterbacks are going to be worth more than any of the running backs, receivers, or tight ends that you could have picked, in my opinion. So I do think this is a pretty standard start, as we also see McCaffrey fall from presumably the 102, 103 last year to the 107 this year.
Yeah, I think that's got to be obviously a big difference too, because the majority of the time you were seeing McCaffrey go inside that top 4 overall pick. Same goes for Saquon Barkley too. He was a guy that would consistently go inside the top 6 overall picks or so. Now this is kind of where the real draft starts, in my opinion, because we see the highest end quarterbacks go off the board. Maybe we start to see, some of these wide receivers start flying off the board, the Justin Jeffersons of the world, the Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown kind of territory of wide receiver. Leo LeBron actually goes with Saquon Barkley. Now, I don't think I can willingly take Saquon in the first round anymore. I honestly might even have a hard time taking him in the second round at this point, just because we've kind of seen already. Saquon Barkley is 24 and a half years old. I'll let you make your pick real quick, actually.
Yep. I was just going to say, I'm going to take Joe Burrow here, because I do think that when we're looking at this tier, we did see that top tier quarterback go. It was between him, DeAndre Swift. I mean, you can make the case of Javonte Williams up here, but DeAndre Swift and obviously those top receivers. The reason why I lean Burrow is because I do think after Burrow, you got question marks about Russell Wilson's age, Trevor Lawrence's organization, Trey Lance. We don't necessarily know how polished he is yet, though I do really, really like Trey Lance. That would be the only other quarterback I'd probably consider in this area. And then we're going to see this turn probably go with a couple of running backs. I'm hoping here that maybe a Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson fall. Again, if it's a Jamar Chase, I can get that stack, obviously. So I think Joe Burrow's a fine pick. He's proven himself as a top 10 fringe type of quarterback this year, and he's still only 24 years old. So I think that was solid.
Yeah. And again, if you guys are doing a dynasty startup, maybe you're doing one immediately following the season or something, it is, cognizant to note like how people are evaluating players, because in this, mock draft, obviously you guys are seeing a lot of quarterbacks go off the board. You're seeing a lot of young players go off the board. So what Decaden does here, he kind of, goes against the grain a little bit, takes a bit of a in his prime win now type of running back, pairs him with a receiver who also is in his prime, but is going to hold his value a little bit longer. And Danny kind of going with the Bengals stack right there, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm a little surprised, actually, Jamar Chase didn't go in the first round. I would have anticipated him going inside the top, 8 to 10 picks. That's probably where I would have him ranked. Currently, he is, in that top tier with Justin Jefferson, with A.J. Brown for me as the top receiver in Dynasty.
Yep, no, I fully agree there. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, and then obviously A.J. Brown is probably that tier of young superstar talent and ascending talents. Obviously, for me, you're looking at Jamar Chase. I mean, this is a 21-year-old superstar receiver. I get the stack with him and Joe Burrow picking at that 110 spot. I don't think you could have done much more from a value accumulation standpoint, because you go any of those wide receivers over the running backs there. The only other running back I actually would have considered would have been Javonte Williams, but I think you got to go with the proven thing of the receiver there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Kyle Pitts, also a very popular discussion of where he's valued in Dynasty as well. Again, another guy that maybe could have snuck his way into the first round in a tight end premium, but I think in a non-tight end premium, the mid-second round range is pretty appropriate value for him. I actually was going to go with Alvin Kamara with my next pick, because I think
good value.
He's a little bit up there in age, and he kind of, limits your flexibility in terms of the winning window that you'd have to kind of commit to. My next highest ranked running back is actually Antonio Gibson. So that's the direction I'm going to go with.
Yep.
I could have went with my highest rated wide receiver, which would have been A.J. Brown at that point. And that top tier of running back for me is Jonathan Taylor on his own. And then it's DeAndre Swift, Antonio Gibson, and Javonte Williams right behind him. So I got a top tier running back or a second tier running back. And I passed on like a first tier wide receiver, but to me, that top tier of running back kind of supersedes a guy like A.J. Brown. So that's kind of the direction I went. I have a feeling we're going to see a bit of a lull for quarterbacks now, because these rookie quarterbacks aren't playing very well. I think this is the range that they would have fit into. If we saw a little bit more promise out of Trevor Lawrence, if we saw more games and more starts out of Trey Lance, this is probably when they would start to be options for a lot of people. But I think people are just kind of, hesitant right now to be able to commit to a second round, Trevor Lawrence or whatever.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. We do see kind of the mix amongst this draft board about potentially teams going win now and teams going with obviously a more value accumulation, young asset type of approach. Again, you basically have Thomas, who's doing the similar strat to me. He's got Dak and CD, a young ascending stack there. And then you got a team like Leo, who has obviously the more win now pieces with the Barkley and Russ. So just kind of shows in Dynasty that if you're drafting specifically based off just rankings alone, you're not necessarily going to get the full fit for your roster. I think personally, the main attack for Dynasty is kind of putting players into buckets and seeing how they can kind of compare to each other. Because comparing a Jamar Chase to a Tyreek Hill, yes, Tyreek Hill's probably going to outproduce him for the next few years. Jamar Chase is probably going to be more valuable for the next 5 years. So basically balancing that out is kind of how you assemble your dynasty roster. Do you want to be that top team in the first few years, or do you want to be that team who, has the young assets, tradability, flexibility to be able to move potentially pieces down the road? So it's all depending on how you play dynasty, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I also think a very important part of Dynasty is maintaining flexibility the further you can go.
Yes.
So with my pick, with Josh Allen, he's a young quarterback, but he's obviously a win now piece as well. That gives me flexibility in the second round if I wanted to go with Alvin Kamara, if I wanted to go with Joe Mixon, or whatever running back you value in that range. It gives me flexibility to do that. Whereas if I went with a Trevor Lawrence, I obviously wouldn't pick him that high, but like somebody like that, it puts me into a bit more of a rebuilding window. Or if I went with a Tom Brady, again, obviously I wouldn't take him in the first round. That puts me in more of a win now window. So that's kind of something you want to be cognizant of. I think maintaining flexibility the further and further you get into drafts is important. And to me, I have a bit of a tier break at wide receiver here. And again, I'm talking about maintaining flexibility. DK Metcalf to me is at the high point of that because again, in a vacuum, Devontae Adams will outproduce him probably the next year, next 2 years maybe. But overall, that flexibility factor that I get with DK Metcalf, who is still, in a conversation for an elite fantasy wide receiver right now, is going to hold weight because DK Metcalf is, 24 years old instead of, 29 like Devontae Adams.
Yep, I definitely agree. And as we kind of see all from the board right now, the running back position is just completely drying up in terms of value. I mean, like, yeah, you still got some win now assets, potentially Ezekiel Elliott and Aaron Jones and stuff like that if you want to compete, which those are going to fall to specific players in this draft. For a guy like me, there's not really running backs apart from maybe Cam Akers that would be appealing to me. And obviously with Cam Akers, you're dealing with the torn Achilles. So I'm probably going to look at the quarterbacks and wide receivers position at this point. And damn you, Leo, that was just absolutely torture. But damn, I was going to take Trey Lance there. But at the end of the day here, I still think Trevor Lawrence is worth this pick because you were taking this guy at the end of the first round last year. We already knew from Fantasy Stock Exchange that this guy was a generational talent. Urban Meyer wasn't necessarily the right coach. I don't see how letting go of Urban Meyer completely impacts this guy's stance to the point where he's falling to the end of the third round. Because I'm talking about a quarterback duo right now. The two last former first overall picks on my team with Burrow and Lawrence, I'm perfectly fine with building around those two and Jamar Chase. So overall, what are your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence falling to the 310 when this guy was pretty much a consensus mid-second round pick after having obviously his struggles as a rookie?
I think that's appropriate value. I think that's probably where he should be going because we do have more question marks about him. And another guy too, with Jalen Waddle going off the board that high, again, I just can't get on board with that. I love Jalen Waddle. He's having a phenomenal rookie season. 114 targets in 13 games is not something to sneeze at. Like that is very, very good numbers. But at the same time, Jalen Waddle going ahead of, and let's take aside the veteran wide receivers. Devontae Adams, again, that's a strategy kind of question mark, whether you're going to go with young or veteran type of talents. But if you're going to go youth, Chris Godwin, who literally just went off the board, I would rather take than a guy like Jalen Waddle. I would rather go with a guy like DJ Moore over Jalen Waddle as well. I would rather go with even a T Higgins over Jalen Waddle at this point. But again, it's all about valuation. The career trajectory that Jalen Waddle has set up for himself so far is definitely worthy of a pick in this range.
Yeah, and you mentioned T Higgins. It'd be between him and obviously DJ Moore for me, but I just like T Higgins more long term. Again, you're getting a little bit younger there. You obviously got the quarterback stability with Burrow. Actually, have the triple stack. I didn't even realize that until now. I think T Higgins. I mean, this is going to be a locked and loaded top 20 at minimum wide receiver, and I think this could be a potential top 15 wide receiver on a year-to-year basis at 22 years old. So getting him here in the fourth round, I think is very, very good value in the Dynasty League. Again, obviously you see the flip side of that. You got Leo LeBron, who's looking more to compete now with that Wilson Barkley nucleus, adding a guy like Cooper Kupp. So
I'm a little surprised. I think people kind of just forgot he was down there. I think he probably goes a little higher than this in most drafts. I'd imagine he'd probably be in the range where Joe Mixon and Austin Eckler went, kind of at that 2-3 turn, even despite Cooper Kupp's age, because he is a little bit older relative to when he was drafted. I think how old is Cooper Kupp right now? 28 years old or something like that? Yeah, so he's a little older and he kind of limits your flexibility, but at the same time, man, like he's the type of receiver that is going to age like fine wine, in my opinion. He's going to age, really well. He's going to be, Keenan Allen's 30 years old right now. I think Keenan Allen's got a couple good years left. I think Cooper Kupp is kind of on that similar career trajectory where he can play to 33, 34 years old and probably be still, pretty effective. That's another one that is obviously fits Metzger's team with Kelsey going to the Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara team. Obviously, that is a win now type of move. This is the point in the draft that I'm okay taking the risk on Cam Akers. So I think this is the point that I'm okay taking the plunge. If I'm in a range in the draft where I'm choosing over way more stable options, then it is a little bit sketchy. But by all accounts, again, this Cam Akers recovery is going well. So this is at a point to me that I'm okay putting him up and raising him slightly as his kind of rehab goes along. Jalen Hurts was actually the guy that I was hoping would fall back to me. He was the guy that I would have taken if Cam Akers had gone. Jalen Hurts to me, again, we weren't big Jalen Hurts guys last year. We weren't, willing to take the plunge on him, around this. He was going around this range last year as well, third round, fourth round range. And we didn't really like the whole job security aspect of it. But it looks like, at least in my opinion, his job is probably secured in 2022 because of the strength of the quarterback class in that year. And the Eagles have the ammunition to help him, whether it's on defense, whether it's on offense, with the variety of draft picks that they have. So I think Jalen Hurts actually might be low-key a little bit of a value at this point in the draft at 410.
Yeah, honestly, I agree there. Again, if Trevor Lawrence hadn't fallen to me and I was staring like Aaron Rodgers, obviously with the age, the uncertainty, whether he's going to make it on, or like any of these other quarterbacks, talking about like Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, I probably consider over him, but that's a lot of illegal issues. And then you get into the Tua, Baker, Ryan Tannehill. Like, yeah, give them Jalen Hurts there. He's a proven fantasy quarterback this year. He's a top 10 quarterback. I think he's honestly a top 6 quarterback right now. And obviously, you still got the youth there. The only concern I have, obviously, is the long-term job security. But there's really been no sign this season, at least, to the point that the Eagles wouldn't look for added help. Again, this is a team that has performed better than expectations. I thought this was going to be more so the bottom of the NFC East type of team. This has been a team that's in the thick of the playoff hunt. I mean, we're talking about they're playing Washington football team this week. And if they win, they would actually be in a top 7 seed spot to make the playoffs. So kudos to Jalen Hurts. Kudos to that Eagles team. I was low on them, and they've clearly shown to be better than they are. So, than I thought they were. So, yeah, I mean, getting him in the 4th round at minimum, even if he's a 1-year starter, you could easily flip him mid-season if you have any doubts about his long-term security. I think that's basically a home run at that spot. And I think Matt Stafford's also a very, very good pick in the 5th round.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually really was going to go with Deshaun Watson here. I've kind of built myself like a could compete, but I'm more so, looking towards the future type of team. Tua's intriguing for that reason because he is, a young quarterback. But again, I do have a little bit of concern with the job security of a guy like Tua as well. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to take Zach Wilson here. And again, a lot of people probably wouldn't like that pick. They think I'm reaching on Zach Wilson. But again, this is a rookie quarterback with a rookie head coach, a rookie, wide receiver as his number 1 wide receiver. This is a very, very young offense, basically, to sum things up. I think Mike LaFleur and Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh have this going in the opposite direction of what Urban Meyer was doing in Jacksonville. So what I'm thinking with Zach Wilson is, yes, he has not played, to the level that I thought he could play, but he's a rookie quarterback. I actually saw DF Bean Counter on Twitter today pull up stats of previous first-round quarterbacks under a clean pocket, which has not been very often for Zach Wilson this year because he's been without Mekhi Becton for most of the season. And his passing grades are very similar to Andrew Luck and Cam Newton's rookie seasons. So again, we got to remember that Justin Herberts don't come along like very often. The fact that Justin Herbert was that good as a rookie should not be the measuring stick for all rookie quarterbacks. He should be looked at as an outlier. So the fact that all these guys, Fields, Lance, Lawrence, and Wilson, are not necessarily having the greatest rookie seasons, it should have been something we expected and been pleasantly surprised by if it didn't happen. Not necessarily we were expecting them to be great right away.
Yep, for sure. And I just see a value here that I didn't recall ever seeing. Like George Kittle at the end of the 5th round. Like I know, again, I got a much younger team, but this is still a guy that is in his late 20s. He's not a 32-year-old tight end like Travis Kelce. We've seen the ceiling these past couple of weeks with a guy like George Kittle in terms of his talent. How is he a 5th round pick?
I don't know, but I honestly was considering him with my pick. And I also considered Mark Andrews too. I think Mark Andrews definitely belongs in this conversation as well. And Mark Andrews got a couple years less on him than Kittle does. I think Andrews probably 25, 26 years old on his 2nd contract secured with Lamar Jackson, who is going to get a mega extension at some point as well. So, I think we should see Andrews go off the board at some point here. I think before he gets back to me. I hope he gets back to me, but I don't think he will.
Yeah, definitely. That would be the only real tight end. I mean, you can consider there. Waller's obviously been banged up this year. We don't necessarily know, like in terms of a win now asset, whether he's going to be on Kittle's level. Because again, he's had every opportunity in terms of volume. I just don't necessarily view the Raiders as being sustainable. Again, we've seen Kittle once he's come back has absolutely been the tight end one these last few weeks. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And Mark Andrews has been just good all season. So in terms of this pick, I'm kind of close here. Oh, shoot, I'm running out of time. Where is he, Elijah? I'm going to take Elijah Moore.
You actual bitch. You see I have Zach Wilson. You knew I was going that direction with my next pick. That hurts. Anyway.
I mean, he is my top-rated receiver in terms of this age bucket available. Right. So, I mean, you can get the other guy. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, so overall, I mean, pretty bog standard draft. Obviously, you got Leo went a little bit of a detour getting that value with the ETN if he does return. I mean, we both believe in the talent there. And then Mark Andrews there to kind of tone up on that team. So good value on both those picks.
Right. And I think there's a couple things that you want to notice about this draft. Yes, like at face value, you guys look at Takeda's team right now. He is clearly building, a win now contender.
Yeah.
And, some of you guys that aren't very familiar with Dynasty might be like, dude, do you guys know what the hell you're talking about? Look at Takeda's team. Like, it's so good. But at the same time, he has a lot of guys on his team that, a year from now are probably going to decline in value. And that's fine if that's what your goal is. If your goal is to win the championship right away, that's fine. And that's, a very, fine goal. And I've used that goal in the past. But at the same time, you also want to maintain flexibility. Like I said, keep some assets on your team that are going to accrue some value. And I think there's a number of guys that are still on the board that kind of fit into that bucket for me. And looking at the quarterback position, I'm not overly excited with Mac Jones at this point, although he does intrigue me a little bit. I'm actually going to go, and I got auto drafted, but I knew who was the pick there because I had it set in my queue. But I have Jerry Jeudy still higher than a lot of these receivers. And I know Jerry Jeudy hasn't had the greatest season. He's dealt with a high ankle sprain. He has, Teddy Bridgewater throwing him the ball. I do anticipate a quarterback upgrade coming this offseason, whether it's, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers. Again, those are the high end, what we're looking for. But that's kind of the hope I'm looking to hold with Jerry Jeudy, because if we hear rumors swirling, I have a selling window, right? Like if I don't believe in Jerry Jeudy long term, but I do, and the ability and what I've seen from Jerry Jeudy so far in the NFL. But if I wanted to sell him, I'm going to be presented with a selling window this offseason, because there is going to be rumors swirling about those quarterbacks potentially heading to Denver. And that's going to cause this 6.8 that I got Jerry Jeudy, a 23-year-old wide receiver who might get a huge, huge quarterback upgrade. That could present me an opportunity to get up to, a DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, Chris Godwin type who went 3-4 rounds earlier.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, obviously you got the route prowess, the separation there. If he gets a guy like Aaron Rodgers, I mean, this could be, I know you compared this before, but this could be like a Devontae Adams situation all over again, a smooth separating route runner that just gets that quarterback to unlock him. But we do see a few picks after you pick. I mean, Amari Cooper at the end of the 6th round, again, another tremendous value. This is a guy that's always going to be pretty undervalued in dynasty startups because he's got that boom bust label. He's always kind of hurt. But yet, this is still a youngish receiver. I mean, I believe he's still only 27 years old, same age as Mike Evans. He's been producing throughout his career. And another value I see here, obviously, is David Montgomery, for a guy that in Gusbuster went with that hero RB at the top, got Jonathan Taylor, stacked out his quarterbacks and receivers, and was able to turn around and take a guy like David Montgomery at the end of the 6th round. I think that's a well-constructed team as well.
Yep. Totally agree there. Again, I wish one of us was kind of going for a bit more of a win now build, but to be honest, just the way that the board kind of fell for me, I've kind of valued the youth a little bit more. So we'll try and touch on some of these teams that are going a little bit more in the direction of trying to win immediately. Like Takeda, obviously perfect example. The second you draft Tom Brady, it's pretty clear that you're in a win now kind of mode.
Yep, and I may not actually take a running back in this draft. No, I'm kidding. This would be a situation where, again, like I would be trading down at this spot. I would be taking the pass catchers, and I would just look to fill the running back position in this spot in my rookie drafts. Because at the end of the day here, I always find that if I'm in a rebuilding type of position, I typically want to get those stud pass catchers, those stud quarterbacks. Because at the end of the day here, once you invest in a running back, you know that your window for them to be elite is going to inherently be less than your quarterbacks and receivers. So typically when okay, I want to transition to a win now, that's when you start acquiring your running backs, in my opinion. But it's your pick. I'm not going to run too long.
No worries. I actually, again, we always talk about aligning your winning window with, when people are going to be in their primes. And with the tight end position, it is a little different than running back, wide receiver, quarterback, etc. With the tight end position, the prime of a tight end usually aligns with the start of their second contract. If they're, a very talented player, which I believe TJ Hawkinson is, former top 10 overall pick. He's going to, even if he doesn't re-sign in Detroit when he's, done his rookie contract, maybe he goes to a new team, whatever the case is, this is a guy that I think can hold value no matter what. He's a young tight end. If he, starts to come into his own next year with a new quarterback potentially, or, whatever the case is, I think this is a guy that come, 2022, 2023, when my team is probably ready to compete, I should be in a position where I have TJ Hawkinson in that, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Darren Waller age range that they're currently at right now. And he's on the field producing at a pretty high level come that time, and should align well with my running backs and, my wide receivers as well.
For sure. And again, I've been in a very young type of team build, but Michael Thomas at the end of the 7th round is just ludicrous to me. I understand people don't like the guy. He's kind of a diva. He hasn't played this year. He's a little bit on the older end, but this is a guy that's almost assuredly going to go up in value next year. Like when this guy goes back on the field and produces like the elite receiver he is, that's 7-10 value. Like I love Brandon Ayuk. No shot I'm taking over Michael Thomas. Marquise Brown, I mean, you can make a case for it given the year he's had. Even a guy like Claypool, Ridley's the same situation as Thomas, except Thomas is a better player when he's on the field. Amari Cooper, I'd still take. Like, I don't understand how Thomas can fall to the 7th round despite the issues that are going around him.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to favor some of the guys that you mentioned there over a guy like Michael Thomas, but I think it is undeniable that realistically, when we're talking about wide receiver value, like we see some of these in their prime wide receivers like Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, like some of these guys could be this time next year where Thomas is now, right? Like it wouldn't shock us if any of those guys, like if Stephon Diggs next year has, 3 hamstring injuries throughout the season, plays only 7 games, and he's suddenly an 8th-round pick in dynasty startups. That wouldn't shock anybody. And that's kind of where we're at with Michael Thomas. I was really hoping Michael Pittman would fall to me, but that's kind of where we're at with Michael Thomas. And I think a lot of people are over penalizing him for being, obviously kind of like a diva and being a little bit susceptible to injuries with the ankle issue that he's dealing with. And I think the underlying point that you already kind of mentioned is that he's assuredly going to go back and up in value once he's on the field.
Yep, fully agree there. Now I'm back on the clock here, and the receiver position is kind of winding down a little bit. It might be a little early, but I don't have enough time to actually fully scan. I'm just going to take Michael Gallup here. He's probably more of a 9th-rounder. I get it. It's probably a little bit early, but this is still a 25-year-old former 1,100-yard receiver. Free agent this year, was probably going to sign as a team's number 1 or 2 wide receiver. And I can see a team like the Colts taking a chance on him where you pair him with a guy like Michael Pittman. You have a guy like Carson Wentz. Maybe they run it back with him. And we have seen that the Colts are one of the more well-run organizations that bringing a talent like Michael Gallup would be able to unlock them. So Mike Williams is also another good shout there, another future free agent.
Yep, definitely agree there. Mike Williams at 8.4, I think is pretty good value.
Yep.
I like Darnell Mooney. I don't know if I could take him over a guy like Mike Williams. The wide receiver board, in terms of the youth and the appreciating assets, starts to get a little sketchy around this range, right? Because now we're talking about Laviska Shenaults and Rondell Moores and Terrace Marshalls and guys that realistically haven't proven a whole lot, right? Like they're not, they haven't even proven the level of a guy like Ayuk or Mooney or Bateman or Pittman or anybody like that. So to me, this is kind of like a wide receiver falling off point. And if you're in a winning window, this is the point that you love, right? Because you might get, a Kenny Golladay who's coming off of a bad season at a very good price there. You might get a Cortland Sutton also, who's I think is a good point in this kind of value tier that we're in right now. I'm looking at the running backs. Nobody kind of excites me in terms of any kind of youth. I'm looking at the tight ends. Again, I already have Hawkinson. I'm not excited about taking another tight end at this point. I'm actually just going to double up on Broncos wide receivers. I'm going to take Cortland Sutton here. Again, I don't really like this board. To be honest, there was no quarterbacks left that I was hoping Mac Jones would fall to me. I was hoping, some of these other wide receivers would fall to me. That at this point in the draft, at this 8-8 pick, I definitely would have traded down. I would have, dangled Cortland Sutton or, whoever else on the board right now. And somebody could come up and get that guy because I just didn't like the board from a youth perspective. I'm not a huge Laviska Shenault, Rondell Moore kind of believer. So I'm willing to, surpass that tier of wide receivers, maybe to the next tier of wide receivers in that kind of age range and just let some other people buy into those guys.
Yeah, no, I definitely could see that as well. We do see a little bit of a fall after Sutton, as much as I like Allen Robinson. Actually, I don't know. Allen Robinson versus Sutton's at least a close battle, but like he's still young enough, Sutton, you're talking about, to the point where, again, they could bring in a very good quarterback upgrade. We've seen the talent before. This former 1,100-yard receiver. Like, I understand the pick fully there, and I don't mind going with the Broncos receivers because they're basically at their minimum value right now. We know right now that Teddy Bridgewater can't handle both of them. We know that Drew Lock is an absolute mess. We know that this team, though, like us personally, is going to be looking for a quarterback upgrade, whether it's Sam Howell in the draft, a Malik Willis, and Aaron Rodgers, or Russell Wilson. This is a team that has the foundation to be able to compete. Just we have to trust the faith that the front office is going to be able to figure out that their one main spot is going to be the quarterback position to fix. So I do agree there. You're getting them basically at basement value. And let's be honest here, if they bring in a guy like Rodgers, Judy's probably going to be a 4th-round pick. They bring in Rodgers. Sutton's probably going to be a 6th-round pick. So you're basically eliminating your own risk there by taking them at their basement values here.
Yeah, definitely agree there. We're seeing the timer actually kick in a little bit as the board starts to thin out. Obviously, it is a lot tougher, and this is the win now range, right? You're seeing the Tyler Lockett's, Robert Woods types go off the board, and these are the guys that, you know, if you're in a win now team and you build, you know, some flexibility early on, I think this is where people, you know, should be focusing their win now energy, because I think a lot of people, when they go into a draft with the idea that they're going to win now, let's say they take Dalvin Cook in the first round, that kind of puts you in a winning window. I think people immediately go and they start taking win now pieces the entire way, but you could still collect flexibility in the early rounds and then wait till this part of the draft to get your win now pieces, your Antonio Browns, your Tyler Lockett's, et cetera, et cetera. AJ Dillon, definitely somebody I had my eye on. A guy that I'm actually going to pick here that I didn't think I would ever say in my life is a very talented player, and I kind of am buying into them. But I think Kadarius Toney's shown me enough to say that he belongs to go before a lot of these other veteran wide receivers and before really any other young receiver that's on the board right now. So I'm going to go with Kadarius Toney. I know he's, you know, been injured or whatever, but at the same time, I've seen what I need to see from a talent perspective. Injuries are fickle, especially soft tissue ones. So if he can figure out a way to get those in check, then I'm, you know, more than excited with what I've seen.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you there. Toney was a phenomenal pick. Another pick that I was really, really hoping fell to me was going to be AJ Dillon. I think at this point, I mean, he's shown the talent. He's shown that when he does get an opportunity, he is at least an efficient running back. And in this type of build, because I accumulated all those young talents at wide receiver, getting a guy like that kind of adds a little bit of stability to my running back room. But there's another name here that I'm really, really looking at. And if he falls, I'll be pretty excited, because this is a guy that we didn't really talk about much going into the draft. He landed on a team that we compared his role potentially to a former member of that team. That's actually going to be Ramondre Stevenson. I think that at this current point in the draft, he's well proven his worth in this year. I mean, he's been a very efficient back, clearly the most adept 3-down back on that roster. And getting him at this point, again, you're talking about the high upside cuffs. I think Ramondre's got standalone value on his own right, and this could be his backfield as soon as 2022 based on what we've seen thus far this year. So getting him here at the 9-10 is tremendous value, in my opinion.
Right. And at the very least, you got to figure Damian Harris probably not going to get re-signed by the Patriots unless it's for like a really cheap value. So maybe they just kind of slide him into a full-time Damian Harris role at the minimum. And Damian Harris was drafted, 2019? So he's going to be, and he was, you know, a 2nd round or 3rd round pick. So he's going to be a free agent after next season or after this season? After next season.
After next season, yes.
But yeah, so even as soon as 2020, like 2023 is the minimum point in time when he's going to be, you know, full-fledged workhorse running back, in my opinion, because I think he's shown enough to the point that we know at the bare minimum, this guy's actually a talented player.
Yep. No, I fully agree with you there. In general here, I mean, Ramondre Stevenson has just been such an efficient player on his touches. So I know I kind of rambled on there. I already made that point, but I don't know. We're in the middle of the draft. I'm trying to think who I'm going to take right now. So if you made it this far in the video, sorry about that. But either way, we're looking at the quarterbacks. There's not really much here. I mean, you could take a shot on one of these guys, but whatever. I'll just take a receiver here, and like, I get Brandon Cooks, I guess. I don't know. I don't have a lot of time on the clock. Obviously, when you're in your draft, you're going to get more time than 30 seconds for the most part. But I feel like Brandon Cooks is honestly just one of the more perennially underrated receivers in the NFL. He is an absolute dumpster fire of a situation right now. I fully get that. But when you're getting a 27-year-old receiver who has produced 1,000 yards in what, 5-6 separate seasons in his career.
He's only 27?
Believe so.
He's got to be 29.
28. Okay. My bad.
Even still, that's still younger than I would have guessed for Brandon. He seems like he's like in his, you know, his wonder years.
Yeah. Like, no, and it's funny because people think he's old because he's obviously had a few injuries in the past. He's kind of been bouncing around between teams, but I don't know. He's proven year in and year out that no matter the situation, he's basically been a 1,000-yard receiver when he's been healthy. So I don't know. You're on the clock here, by the way.
Yeah, the Freiermuth pick was absolute snipe. That's exactly who I was going for. And I know I already have Hawkinson, but I'm going to take another young tight end that I believe in because tight end's a very rough position. I'm taking Cole Kmet here. He's tied to a young quarterback. Maybe the Justin Fields person, whoever took him, Souther. And if this was a real league, I would, you know, shop Cole Kmet to him at some point and be like, hey, you want, you know, a young wide receiver or a quarterback and tight end stack? I think Cole Kmet has shown me enough to the point that, again, we got to remember this is a second-year tight end. Tight ends don't usually produce until their second, third, fourth year in the NFL. Cole Kmet has been fantasy relevant already. He's a young tight end. He has high draft capital. He is tied to a young quarterback, and he's proven the ability enough to the point that I think he's going to be fantasy relevant again next year, and probably even more so than he is this year.
Yep, no, I fully agree with you there. Getting him at that value is pretty much a steal in my opinion. But we are seeing the value on the board dip pretty tremendously, and this just kind of shows me right now that the hot pocket of picks. I mean, last year it was the round 3 to 7 area. I think that's where it is again this year. I mean, you're going from Michael Thomas to Christian Kirk in a 2-round stretch. Just kind of shows you the drop off there.
Right. And that's good to know in case you're trading, right? Because if you're going to trade down from a 7th round pick or whatever, let's say you're picking at the 7-4 where Chase Claypool went, somebody wants to come up and get Chase Claypool, TJ Hawkinson, Marquise Brown, whatever, and they're offering you, a 10th rounder and a 13th rounder. Like, we're seeing what the 10th rounders are getting you right now. And Hunter Renfrow should not have went at the 10-9. I think that was kind of an oversight on our part. I think he deserves to go a little bit higher than that at this point. But man, like, if you're giving up a Chase Claypool type for, Ronald Jones and, whatever you're getting in the 13th round, I think that's an absolute steal. So just because, people float some numbers at you and they're like, hey, I'll give you my 10th rounder, my 13th rounder, you got to check the ADP, check, who else is going in that range and see what you're giving up for the potential of getting, 2 players that might be, multiple tiers below the player that you're giving up.
Yeah, no, I fully agree here. And also keep in mind that Sleeper is going to keep updating their Dynasty ADP throughout the offseason. Because, I mean, right now, obviously off my head, I'm not going to recognize a lot of people. But I bet you there's probably at least 15, 20 names that are probably going to work their way into this top 11 round area that are simply just buried in the ADP by Sleeper. So we'll see how that dynamic changes as well.
I was considering taking Chenault here because I actually kind of like the value at this point. One guy that I think is maybe worth noting, I don't think I'd pick him quite yet, but Davis Mills has kind of shown me enough to the point that I think he actually might have a future in the NFL. Again, if he had been drafted by Tampa Bay, which he definitely should have been instead of fucking Kyle Trask, that would have been a much better landing spot for his, future endeavors in the NFL. I'm going to go with a guy that I believed in coming into the year. He hasn't really shown me a whole lot in his rookie season, but I mean, the expectations weren't extremely high for De'Ami Brown. I still like the prospect. I still like what I saw from him at North Carolina, and he's had moments. But there was a big kind of tier and cluster of these rookie wide receivers that you could have went with, in my opinion, for a team like mine with Nico Collins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and De'Ami Brown. De'Ami Brown, to me, was comfortably the highest rated rookie that I had out of those guys coming out of school. So I'll just stick with what I had in my draft rankings and roll with De'Ami Brown there.
Yep, I like that pick. I also really like the Mike Gesicki pick. I mean, we've been kind of lower on him, but if you're getting a guy that has shown this year to be the most productive of his career, going into free agency at this point of the 11th round is tremendous value. I'm kind of looking at the board. There's not much here, like not much at all, to be honest. Another guy that I don't mind, Daniel Jones. Again, like maybe it's a little bit early on face value, but I don't necessarily view the Giants as being able to move off of him this year. I think they're going to run it back with him one more year. Worst case scenario, he sees another team the year after. And this is still a guy with the pedigree of being the 6th overall pick, having a good rookie year, has had a couple flashes in these past few years. And despite the Giants really being a dumpster fire, he isn't much worse than, the 25th best quarterback in the league right now. And getting him in the 11th round, he gets into a better situation. You never know, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could see the Giants going after. They have 2 1s, right? Because they traded back with Chicago
picks,
in the draft. So maybe they go after a Russell Wilson, a Deshaun Watson, and Aaron Rodgers with some of that. That I guess Aaron Rodgers is a free agent. They won't have to do that. But like Russell Wilson specifically, I've seen the Giants floated out a number of times as a possibility. Maybe Daniel Jones heads to Seattle on the way back of that trade. You never know. Maybe you get a more starting options out of that. So the draft is over. We'll try not to dwell too much on the picks, but overall, just looking at my team, you got Josh Allen, Gibson, Metcalf, Akers, Wilson, again, Judy, Hawkinson. All these guys were meant with the flexibility thing in mind, right? So I could have actually, if I wanted to, all these guys are going to be valuable next year, and maybe I go with a Wilson, maybe I go with a Tua instead of a Wilson or something like that. I could have pivoted in those mid rounds where you're seeing the Allen Robinsons and the Robert Woods' slide. I could have pivoted to more of like a win now approach with some young cornerstone pieces. That was definitely something I could have done, but I decided to kind of fully commit to the young core of this team And obviously, I'd probably be in a situation like this once I got to the, Cortland Sutton range, be looking to trade down, acquire, maybe some second rounders in the next draft, or just more young pieces on top of that, and kind of fully commit to that. But again, just because your first, let's say you look at my team, you go Allen, Gibson, Metcalf. My first 3 picks were young pieces. Doesn't mean you fully have to go for the full-on rebuild like I did. You could have pivoted at any point, really, and taken some value that fell to you. Could have went with Mike Evans instead of Zach Wilson. The next round, turn around and grabbed Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, somebody like that. And then I could have just fully pivoted that. Yeah. So that's basically what my strategy was. Again, I'll let you talk about your team. You kind of, we kind of did similar things. So
yeah, for sure. Again, like that's a main thing here too. Obviously, I was more pigeonholed into a younger team because I took Trevor Lawrence in the 3rd round. I'm basically more so betting on the potential rather than the win now type of production that, say, an Aaron Rodgers or Jalen Hurts or a Matthew Stafford could provide me at that pick. So overall, once I was in those first 3 rounds, Burrow fell to me at the 110. I kind of viewed it as not a tier break fully, but a value break in terms of him over Russ, him over any of the other quarterbacks. So that's the reason why I went Burrow. Receiver, I mean, Jamar Chase was staring me in the face. I already had Burrow, got that stack, a clear top 3 wide receiver in Dynasty for me. Pretty much a no-brainer there. Trevor Lawrence, quarterback 2 for me coming into the season in terms of the fantasy Dynasty perspective. Had a bad rookie season. Urban Meyer's fired. I think that's only a positive for his future outlook. Again, I'm not going to deny the fact that he's been awful this year, but this is still a guy with an elite arm talent, elite mobility for his size. Getting him here at the 3rd round when he was going, again, at the end of the 1st round, early 2nd round just last year is a way to capitalize on fallen value based off public perception. Once I was in that spot, I kind of knew, okay, this is a younger team. Didn't take another run. You guys can see if this was a redraft team, you would hate me because I only have 1 running back through 11 rounds, but I'm looking for value accumulation. I know that I'm not going to compete year 1, probably not year 2 either. So I'm going to be looking in this scenario. If Michael Thomas has a good start to 2022, can I get future picks for him? If Michael Gallup signs somewhere and becomes a wide receiver 1 and I can get, a 1st and a 2nd for him, that type of value. Overall, I think this is a team that is kind of in their ascending value type of phase for the most part, because the majority of the guys I got aren't going to be worth pennies by next year, by 2023. They're all going to at least hold their value, if not gain value, in my opinion.
Right. And I think the one trap that some people can get themselves into when building a rebuilding dynasty roster is they take everybody that has upside, quote unquote, right? They'll look at every pick and they're going to go, I'm going to take Rondell Moore and then Kadarius Toney and then like Terrace Marshall and all these guys. They're just going to ring off all these rookie wide receivers or whatever. But at the same time, you still do want to fill out your team with guys that have proven it already to some degree, whether it's their rookie season, if they're a 2nd-year player, or whatever the case is. So just because, I was a rebuilding team doesn't mean I was going to take, a young player over a guy like Cortland Sutton, who's been in the league for a couple of years, because Cortland Sutton is still a young player and he's still going to hold some value, especially if he gets a QB upgrade. So it's okay to do that is basically my point, because I feel like some people will get themselves into the trap, basically, if they're making a rebuilding dynasty team, of just taking only rookies or 2nd-year players. Like you can take, 3rd, 4th-year players as long as they're a bit younger and they have some kind of, future outlook where you could see them, rising in value or something like that. So I hope you guys did enjoy that video. Again, a little bit annoying that we didn't go with a one rebuilder, one, contender, but at the same time, you guys can look at Tacaden's team, look at some of the other teams that were contending. Obviously, everybody in the FSC community in the Discord, pretty sharp, especially Tacaden, who's actually in our listener dynasty league. Sir. So if you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, tell us, what you liked about it. Tell us what you want to see dynasty content going forward. We're starting, obviously, this is the fantasy football playoffs. In a couple weeks from now, we will be in full off-season mode, and we will be bringing you, constant dynasty content throughout the entire offseason. Again, if you want to support us, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. Also hit the join button on our YouTube page to become a member, a tone setter of the Fantasy Stock Exchange YouTube channel. Peace out, guys. I'll talk to you soon.